Salman, welcome to Waterstones, first of all.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about your latest novel, Quichotte. We should probably clear up, first of all, the pronunciation question. Yeah. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, Quichotte. It's really the normal French pronunciation. And there's an opera called Don Quixote in French. Mm-hmm. And the character who uses this as his pseudonym likes the opera, so he calls himself after the French version.
Very good. Now, it is, of course, inspired by Don Quixote. Mm-hmm. And I thought we could maybe start off by talking about why you wanted to take that inspiration, to take that classic foundation text of Western literature and use it as the sort of inspiration for a very modern book.
Well, it's just that I was thinking of writing a novel that travelled across America. Really, it's an antidote to my previous novel, which happened almost entirely on Manhattan Island. You know, I remember telling myself, "You should leave home now. You should time to leave town."
Yeah.
And so I had this idea of doing a kind of a road novel, and somewhere around the time when I was thinking about this, coincidentally I had to read Don Quixote because there was an anniversary of Cervantes, and I was asked to write something about it. So I picked it up after a long time, and the moment I looked at it, I thought, oh well, this gives me a good sense of how to write a road novel, and immediately my own characters, who are rather different from Quixote and Sancho, popped into my head. And so it was like a trigger mechanism, you know, this experience of rereading Don Quixote. And actually the journey that my characters go on is not really based on the original, but it certainly gave me the starting inspiration.
I suppose a word that's going to be used a lot when talking about this book is satire, and a word that was used for Don Quixote as well, satirizing the times that it was written about. And you appear to be having the time of your life, actually, in this book, taking elements of modern popular culture and satirizing them. Did you ever have any worry that we're living in an age which is almost beyond satire? Because it's...
Well, I mean, certainly it is true that the old phrase about truth being stranger than fiction has never been more true. You know? But what I've found, just living in America, is that actually there's still very much a place for this kind of pointed comedy, because of an evening sitting at home turning on the late night comedians, I'm very grateful for them. You know, if I'm listening to Stephen Colbert or Samantha Bee or Bill Maher or whatever, I feel actually that they're through the use of comedy, they're sharper than the news commentators in the daytime, and sometimes the knife goes deeper, you know. And so I think there still is very much a role for this kind of whether it's stand-up comedy or written down books. I think there's really a place for it, because if you do it right, you can really just go a bit further than ordinary reportage.
And so with this novel, what were the things that you were really hoping to sort of puncture with your...
Well, junk television to start with, in particular reality television. But also all that other stuff that we have now on the internet, which begins to blur the edges between truth and lies. You know, I mean, I think that one of the problems of the web is that you can have two websites, one of which is scholarly and authoritative and etc., and another one which is total junk. And they look exactly the same, you know, and they seem to have the same kind of authority. And I think increasingly it gets hard for people or some people anyway, to distinguish between these things. And I think that's dangerous when this rubbish, like, you know, Kardashians and bachelorettes and you know, Big Brother houses and so on, when that begins to occupy the front of people's minds and present itself to you as reality, whereas in fact it's complete unreality, it's completely manipulated reality. You know, I think you begin to do something dangerous to people when you make it hard for people to distinguish truth from lies. And so I wanted to have a go at that.
As you say, with that difficulty to distinguish, there is that worry that people might see a novel as just simply entertainment,
yes,
and maybe not understand the more serious point that's being
well,
made.
You know, well, the thing is that there's that's the satirical side of the novel, but there's also a kind of, I mean, in many ways, I think more important kind of human side of the novel, because what I liked about my version of the great Don is that he's not. I mean, the original is quite melancholic. You know, he's referred to as the knight of the dolorous countenance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a sort of sad-faced, sad sack. and I wanted, my character is actually absurdly optimistic and hopeful.
Yeah.
You know, and smiley. And I like the idea of having an optimist, you know, of somebody who is unshakably hopeful and believes that the world will carry him to his goal, that love will find a way, you know. I wanted a character like that to go through the craziness of the present, which doesn't always justify optimism or hope.
I mean, we don't want to give away what happens to Quichotte on his quest for true love, but I wonder whether you yourself feel optimistic about where we are now and what's happening.
Well, I'm not despairing.
Okay.
Because I think despair is a kind of luxury.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we have to. There's a lot wrong, which I don't even have to specify because we all think about it every day. You know, but I remember, you know, I was just a history student, not a literature student, and one of the things that history teaches you is that history does not run on tram lines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not inevitable that it will go in a certain direction. Events can make very sudden left turns or right turns without any warning, and the world can change dramatically overnight. You know, the fall of communism is an example of that. One doesn't despair. You don't think that the world is inevitably going to hell. You know, it might not. It might go somewhere worse, or somewhere better. So that's what I think. I mean, there's a wonderful phrase much used that was said by the Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci, where he said that what one should have is pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. You know, and I think that's how I think about it. I mean, like when I finished Midnight's Children all those years ago, and nobody knew who I was, you know, etc. I thought to myself, I think this is pretty good. You know, but I had no way of knowing whether the world would agree. You know, I mean, I hoped it did, and as it turned out, it was okay. This book, I had a similar feeling. I thought, you know, I think I've done something here that to me feels a bit special. You know, but I have no way of knowing whether the world will think that too. And so but I haven't had that particular feeling except on these two occasions. So, you know, I hope it works.
I can't answer for the world, I can only answer for myself, but as I say, it was just a riotous read. There's so much in there to enjoy. So Salman, thank you so much for the book, and thank you for telling us a bit more about it.
Thank you.